RoseAnne Archibald is speaking out after her historic removal last week as National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. She is urging her supporters to step up and demand that she gets her job back.
I want to be reinstated because I have a sacred responsibility that I have to fulfill. And there has to be ceremony before I begin that journey and at the end. And what the Chiefs did on June 28th is they ignored that ceremony. They ignored our sacred ways. And they just went ahead and did one of the most violent acts against an Indigenous First Nation woman leader ever.
The CBC's Olivia Stefanovich has been on this story for us since day one, really, and she joins us again now. So, Olivia, we were waiting for this video when you were here yesterday.
Yes.
So what else is Archibald saying beyond what we saw in that clip?
Well, RoseAnne Archibald is leaning on grassroots supporters to get her job back at the Assembly of First Nations. This video that was posted to her social media accounts late yesterday is the first time we're hearing from her since she was ousted as National Chief last Wednesday, something that she calls a great injustice. And she's now calling on First Nations people from across the country, particularly women, to rise up and contact their chiefs and councils to get her reinstated. This decision does ultimately rest with chiefs and assembly at the Assembly of First Nations, David. And the reason why she was ousted follows a workplace investigation that found she harassed and sought retaliation against AFN staffers. And it is important to note that these aren't the first allegations that she's faced as a leader at the Assembly of First Nations. When she was Ontario Regional Chief, she also faced complaints from 10 other AFN staffers, but an investigation didn't move forward because those staffers said that they feared retaliation, something that an investigator found credible. But at the same time, David, Archibald has been consistent, and she says that these complaints only came forward because she asked questions about finances at the AFN.
Right, and so we have this messy situation, right, with unsubstantiated allegations of financial impropriety coming from the former chief, the findings of bullying and improper harassment against her, and all of this with an AFN meeting coming up in a couple of days. What are we expecting there?
Yeah, that's right. So First Nations leaders from across the country, they're invited for a meeting in person in Halifax. This is a general meeting from the AFN. And, you know, many of these leaders, they said that they want to move forward. They say that they want this to be a reset, but it's unclear how that can actually happen with this leadership issue still hanging in the balance. Archibald calling for her to be reinstated. And it is possible that she could show up. She could be invited by a chief. And it is also possible, David, that there could be an emergency resolution to get her reinstated. So there could be another vote. All
right, lots of drama still ahead. Thank you so much. This is CBC's Olivia Stefanovich. Okay, for more on this story, let's bring in Nigan Sinclair. He's with the Winnipeg Free Press. He's also a professor at the Department of Indigenous Studies at the University of Manitoba, and of course, a regular panelist here on Power and Politics. Nigan, good to talk to you as always.
Great. Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about the politics of this video that RoseAnne Archibald released. What are the odds that helps her get reinstated as the national chief?
It was a bit of an odd video. She was in her car, having just gone on a hike, and sort of said she wanted to be close to the land. So it was a bit of an odd, I think people expected a little bit more of a professional outcome out of that, but it is what it is. And in this situation, she's calling on supporters to demand their chiefs and council to reinstate her as national chief, and then also demand a forensic audit, which is something she's been calling for years.
So how is this all going down, though, with these two competing narratives, right? You have the people who kicked her out saying she was removed after a report into allegations that she was bullying staff. And she's implied that she was pushed out for calling for this forensic audit following unsubstantiated allegations of corruption. How is it playing out with people in the community?
Well, according to her, it's substantiated. I mean, she's been leaking documents to chiefs in the assembly, which is also something else she's been accused of, releasing confidential documents and breaching privacy and so on. She claims that she has proof, and if that's been released to the public is other to be seen. There's two real sides here. There's the regional chiefs, which have small constituencies in provinces, mostly provinces, and then there's 10 of them, and then there's the national chief, which is the democratically elected national chief by the chiefs of Canada, about 643 of them. And so what you've got here is you've got a real power divide between these two sides. And right now, the regional chiefs hold all of the major control within the governance of the organization. So they can hold an election where a very minor amount of people showed up on an online meeting. Only about a fifth of the chiefs voted to get her removed. And so what we have now is we have an upcoming annual general meeting with all of the chiefs of Canada in Halifax coming up next week. And it's going to be a rather rancorous situation in which those chiefs are now going to face off against 10 regional chiefs with the national chief not present, coming in via electronic means, calling for her to be reinstated.
Well, what's your sense, Nigan, of how deep the fractures might be when they do meet in Halifax? I mean, does this vote speak for a clear majority opinion, or are there real divisions that are going to be on display here?
Well, as you can imagine, it's difficult to get anyone, even in Parliament, to agree when there's parties. In this situation, there's 640 First Nations. There's no real party system. And so to get everybody on board is difficult. It is, however, a very small constituency, about a fifth of the chiefs that voted her out. There was a much larger segment, about a third, that voted her in. And so she only had 1 year left in her mandate. The question really is why remove her now when she's asking very hard questions around the organization? There's this human resource report where two staffers were legitimated in their claims that she harassed them, but she, at the same time, she's claiming that they are hiding or acting inappropriately or whatever else that she's arguing. And so why not just let this ride out? Well, I mean, democracy is democracy. It seems as though the regional chiefs wanted to get rid of her very quickly and for a particular reason, and we may have answers in Halifax next week.
Obviously, it's a lot of division and a lot of suspicion on display here. I mean, how does the AFN as a whole move forward through all of this?
Well, it's important to identify, and this is not a demeaning comment in any way, this is a fact, that the AFN is not a government, it's a lobby organization. And that means is that it speaks to the government. So everyday First Nations people really don't get impacted by when the national chief is removed, when the regional chiefs take control, whatever it might be. But it does impact because the AFN does purport to speak for status Indians on reserves. So therefore, the federal government uses that organization as kind of a consultative body. And therefore, they make decisions with the AFN's approval or input. And that does impact the lives of First Nations people. So the question is the AFN still legitimate in being able to articulate that when it's doing fairly complicated, nefarious kinds of things when it comes to governance? Is it really legitimate in its claims of purporting to represent First Nations people? And then is it also representing chiefs? Because that's what the AFN really does. In this case, you can't really say that 1/5 of the chiefs showing up to an online meeting and legitimately remove the national chief who is democratically elected, has 1 year left in the mandate. Any other organization, this would raise a lot of red flags.
No, it's certainly raising a lot of questions when you look at this and how it went down. And it was the second attempt to remove her, so obviously there's a lot of scar tissue built up at that level in the AFN. But now they've got no leader. They got to find an interim leader. I mean, how difficult do you think that will be? And any idea who might want to do this on a permanent basis going forward, presuming there will have to be elections for a permanent, or at least the next national chief?
I wrote in my column for the Free Press recently, I said, the real story coming out of this is who's going to then announce to run for national chief. The election will be held in December. There are many forces that have been resisting RoseAnne Archibald for quite a long time, asking those very difficult questions involving the finances and the governance of the organization, who's acting inappropriately, who isn't, and so on. Those people who are with the regional chiefs, many of them are really affiliated with the previous national chief, Perry Bellegarde, who has been sort of a specter in all of this, in that what RoseAnne Archibald has been talking about is some of the things that were going on during National Chief Perry Bellegarde's reign. So if you see a regional chief who announces they're going to run for national chief and they are a very close relationship with Perry Bellegarde, you may be able to start to connect the dots there on what we saw this past week in the removal of the national chief.